Have you ever found yourself looking at your partner, the person you absolutely love, and just wondered, why do we feel so distant? It's this quiet, really painful question that so many of us face. Well, today, we're going to dive into exactly why that happens. And that's the real kicker, isn't it? You're living in the same house, you're sharing the same bed, but you still feel like you're miles apart. It's confusing, it's frustrating, and it happens all the time. But the reason why often starts with something surprisingly small. It all boils down to one tiny and honestly kind of sneaky little word, perhaps. This word, this is the seed of doubt. It's not about what's actually happening. It's about the stories we start telling ourselves in the quiet moments. It's the first thread in a narrative that can, if we're not careful, pull a whole relationship apart. So let's get into it. Let's break down what we're calling the perhaps problem. We're going to look at how these tiny little imagined thoughts can balloon into these powerful beliefs that create actual real-world distance between two people who love each other. You know how it goes. It starts so innocently. Perhaps he's not telling me something. Or perhaps she doesn't care about this anymore. These thoughts, they're not based on any real evidence, right? They're just assumptions. But the more we let them swirl around in our heads, the more they start to feel like the truth, slowly building this invisible wall between you. So where do these perhaps thoughts get all their fuel? Well, a big one is comparing today to how things used to be. We look back at those early days, the honeymoon phase, and our current reality can feel like a major downgrade. And that comparison, it's the perfect breeding ground for doubt. And you have to look at this from both sides. She's remembering the spontaneous flowers, the calls just to say hi, but now she just sees a guy who's tired and distant. And he's remembering these warm welcomes at the door, but now sees a partner who seems constantly busy and distracted. From both points of view, it really feels like something special has been lost. But here's the thing we absolutely have to understand. The now isn't about less love, it's about more life. Your family has gotten bigger, responsibilities have piled up, and both of you are dealing with pressures that just didn't exist back then. It's not a change in affection, it's a massive change in circumstance.
And when that huge gap between then and now isn't filled with understanding, well, our minds tend to fill it with something way more destructive, suspicion. And this is where those small doubts can start to turn pretty dark.
Oh man, this is such a classic. A simple change, like putting a phone on silent, is no longer just a practical thing. Nope. In your head, fueled by perhaps, it becomes Exhibit A in a case that you're building against your own partner. But just look at the reality for a second. The reasons are usually completely boring and logical. Maybe he's just trying not to wake the baby with a work email, or his company requires a password now. Without just asking, the suspicious story is the only one you hear. And of course, it goes both ways. He might see her spending more time with a friend, and his mind just jumps to the worst conclusion. That perhaps monster strikes again, right? Questioning her motives and creating this pit in his stomach. But again, the real reason is often so simple and frankly, so healthy. Maybe she just needs that connection to recharge her own batteries. Having her own life and her own outlets can make her a happier person, which makes her a better partner. The story we choose to believe really is everything. Okay, so beyond suspicion, there's another powerful force that creates this distance, and that's our own hidden insecurities. These are those personal fears that we carry around and then project onto our partners, and wow, can they lead to some massive misunderstandings. This is such a perfect and honestly a heartbreaking example of a total cross-connection. She's thinking he's ashamed of her, so she pulls back. He sees her pull back and thinks she's miserable, so he stops asking her to go to things. You see, they're both trying to protect each other, but because they never say it out loud, their own insecurities are creating the exact distance they're both so afraid of. And you know what else feeds our insecurities? Our own words. In the heat of a fight, we can say some really awful things. Things we don't mean at all. But those words, they don't just vanish. They hang in the air. They plant this deep-seated fear of abandonment that makes it so much harder to be open and vulnerable with each other again.
So with all of this going on, does it just mean the love is gone? No, not at all. And this might be the most important part of this whole thing. What we need to wrap our heads around is that love itself, it changes. It evolves.
You know, love's journey often looks a lot like this. It kicks off with that incredible spark of attraction and passion. But over time, that fire settles into this warm, steady glow of duty and care for each other.
And then, eventually, it matures into this deep, deep-rooted sense of shared responsibility for the life and the family you've built together.
So listen, this is the key. The expression of love changes, but the love itself doesn't have to go anywhere. The problem isn't that the passion is gone. The problem is expecting love in year 10 to look and feel exactly like it did in year 1. It's supposed to be different. It's supposed to be deeper. Once you understand this evolution, it lets you see your relationship from a whole new, much healthier perspective. And it lets you stop those perhaps thoughts before they can even take root. And this quote right here, it just puts everything in a perspective, doesn't it? It's this powerful reminder to step back and appreciate what you actually have. Instead of obsessing over these tiny, imagined cracks, we can choose to see the strong foundation that you built over years. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Are the stories you're telling yourself built on perhaps, or are they built on the truth of a love that hasn't disappeared, but has simply grown up? Because the perspective you choose can make all the difference in the world.